Welcome to Fieldsports Britain, and it's happy birthday to us, happy birthday to us, happy birthday to us. We're a year old on the 12th of August 2010. Coming up in the programme, I go on a course in the West Country to learn how to behave on shoots. But first, we go to the extremes of England and Scotland to find out about grouse. I'm off to Exmoor, not a natural habitat, you might think. Freddie Cartwright has spent the last 3 years writing a research report on the grouse of Exmoor in the southwest of England. The only problem is, as he admits, there aren't any.
Brought us up here because it was this spot and this monument where the last grouse on Exmoor was apparently seen.
Oh, when was that?
Well, that was last year, September the 27th. 2009.
What, there was a grouse seen here last year?
So we're told. However, the grouse had been declared extinct on Exmoor 3 years prior to that.
Now, you're supposed to be the great white grouse hunter, aren't you? You're the one who just produced a 20,000 word report on the grouse on Exmoor. Why weren't you the one who spotted the grouse?
Well, because the extent of my research went to trying to find the man who had seen the last grouse on Exmoor. I believed them to be extinct, and I spent most of last summer, rather than up here looking for a bird that didn't apparently exist, trying to find the man who'd seen the last one, who turned out to be a man involved in stag hunting up, who spent a lot of his days up on this moor. We're on Brendan Common today, and I'd finally tracked him down and had presented him with a bottle of whiskey as being the man who had seen the last grouse, and within 3 days of being presented with that, he rang me to say he'd seen another one just in the valley behind us.
I find this with giant sloth hunting, is if you offer them a bottle of whiskey, there's no end to the number of giant sloths they see.
Well, the bottle of whiskey was there for everybody, and you would have thought more people would have come forward. The man who saw this grouse is used to seeing them, and as I said, had seen the last grouse on Exmoor, and that was back in 2004.
And that's confirmed?
That was confirmed by no less authority than David Balance, who is the real grouse expert in this part of the world.
Right. So what was your role in all this? How did you end up writing this great report?
Well, I'd been lucky enough to live in various heathery bits of the British Isles. I've lived in the Scottish Highlands, I've lived on the Yorkshire moors, been in Wales and down on Dartmoor, and I've come to Exmoor last of all, and was fascinated to know why there were no grouse here. So I investigated the history and discovered that there was quite a rich grouse history here, but sadly no longer.
Have they always been here since the Ice Age?
No, not at all. Black grouse are indigenous here. Red grouse were never here until, as part of the great Edwardian movement, an enterprising landowner and businessman who lived at Orr Manor in the distance here got fed up of going to heading north every August when he had so much heather of his own, and decided to introduce them on Exmoor.
So what did he caught up the grouse?
Well, in 1916 he went up to Dumfriesshire, caught up, some sources say 50 brace, some say 100 brace, brought them down overnight on a train. Apparently it's very important that they wake up on the moor as the sun comes up.
So you've got to catch them when it's dark and let them go when it's dark?
Catch them when it's dark in Dumfriesshire, race them down on the train overnight and get them here before it gets light in the morning.
Well, what do? Do they turn to stone otherwise?
Sadly, that wasn't covered. But I'm told if you want them to take, that's where how they need to be here. And he released, so not really very many birds at Orr Manor in 1916, which is of course a moment when there weren't any keepers because they were all away in the trenches. So the whole of Exmoor was ostensibly quite an unlikely place for grouse to survive. And they took to it very well.
And were still here last year, as far as we know?
As far as we know, there was still one here last year.
And where was that one?
That one was in the valley behind us, which looks extremely grassy. We can swing the camera and have a look at it. But they have apparently adapted their lifestyle to the Exmoor landscape, so that they no longer parade and call and let you know their whereabouts. They scuttle and keep down underneath the undergrowth most of the time.
That's what West Country people do, is it?
That's what West Country grouse do.
And you're telling me that Highland Scots don't scuttle. Okay, so 1916 they came here, and 2009, as far as we can guess, thanks to a bottle of whiskey, they were still here.
Well, in 2004 they were definitely still here. 2006 they were pronounced extinct. 2009 we think one bird, which would suggest the presence of at least a few, were still here.
You brought a map. Should we have a look at that?
Yes. That is All Manor, where they were introduced in 1916, and the estate covered Mill Hill and up here onto this side of Brendan Common. Brendan Common here is where we are at the moment. That's the memorial stone where we're standing, and this is the emptiest bit, the wildest bit of them all.
Yeah.
That's Dunkery over here, which is where the best heather is, but also the most people.
Yep.
And that's where grouse, that became grouse headquarters for most of the 20th century. They were there by the mid-20s and had spread down as far as North Moulton and to all these other heather-topped hills here by 1927.
Anything pink is heather, is it?
Anything pink is moorland.
Let's leave the quest for non-existent grouse and go to join the mainstream. The Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust is surprised to report yet another record year for grouse populations.
Interestingly, 2010 looks like being a record year. Now, the significance behind that is that it follows on a record year last year. We're going to have 2 record years in a row. That's very untypical of grouse populations because normally, after periods of high density, populations tend to crash, largely through disease. But fortunately today, we've got a range of research management prescriptions which allow us to tackle disease problems in grouse and maintain high densities. So another excellent year. In the north of England, we're looking at brood numbers are much higher than last year, about 50% higher, as high in some cases as 600 grouse per square kilometre, which is a fantastic density of grouse.
There are still mysteries about why grouse grow well in some areas and not in others.
With regard to Wales, sadly in Wales, for a number of reasons, red grouse populations are at a very, very low ebb. That's interesting, you know, because historically Wales actually had the highest grouse densities in the United Kingdom, going back to the 30s and 40s. Grouse shooting is no longer a serious activity in Wales owing to these low densities, but as I say, Scotland and the north of England are looking very good this year. The 2 principal factors which limit grouse productivity, certainly over the past 10 or 20 years, are 2 key diseases. The first is louping ill, which is a virus. It's a tick-borne virus which affects grouse populations. It's a very significant disease because in infected populations, louping ill will kill over 75% of annual chick production. So clearly, in any attempts to try to restore grouse stocks, tackling the louping ill issue is critically important. The other important disease is a disease called strongylosis. Strongylosis is caused by the strongyle worm, which is a free-living agent in upland habitats. In the past, the strongyle worm was at the root of cycling grouse populations. Grouse populations would rise. As the grouse become more numerous, they pass the strongyle worm between each other, you know, more quickly. So the strongyle infection goes up and the grouse would crash. At low density, strongylosis ceases to become a problem and the grouse populations begin to rise and you get the cycle. Our research has now provided a product called medicated grit. Medicated grit is a means of making available an antihelminthic, a wormer, to the free-living grouse. And what that allows us to do is to maintain grouse at high density without exposing them to the effects of the strongyle worms. So these are 2 key issues which any grouse moor owner is going to be concerned about in infected areas, and 2 issues that we spend a lot of time working with. Our research continues and we provide a lot of advice to grouse moor owners to tackle these diseases.
GWCT research shows that good gamekeepering is good for grouse.
Yeah.
The north of England benefits from probably a higher intensity of management. That's to say there's a higher density of managed gamekeepered moors. Now that intensive management brings a sort of group, you know, a wider benefit. We recently commissioned a report which was carried out by Stirling University, And very briefly, what that's indicated is that the current economic benefit of grouse shooting to Scotland is something in excess of £23 million a year, and supporting over 1,000 full-time jobs. That's a significant driver, that's a significant input to the Scottish rural economy. Of course, it's worth also saying that the wider biodiversity benefit that accrues from grouse moor management is probably equally important. If I could just go to the north of England for a moment, currently grouse management provides the principal investment and management over 75% of the special protection area for the upland waders, lapwing, curlew and golden plover. Now, what our research has shown is that on those areas, on areas managed as grouse moor, those birds are achieving 3 times higher levels of productivity than on areas which aren't managed for grouse moor. I think it's reasonable to say that meeting our targets, meeting our biodiversity action plan targets for those species is dependent on grouse moor management. But because without those levels of productivity, sadly, these important iconic species are going to continue to decline.
The market is looking better, definitely. We've let more grouse shooting this year than we have done for the last 2 years. I mean, all the classic estates like Wormergill, Allen Heads, Gunnerside, they're the people wanting to go to the named moors, and they've been very, Gunnerside, for example, had a very disappointing year last year, whereas 2-3 years ago it had a very good year, and this year they're looking like having a fantastic season, and there's a lot of demand for people wanting to go back there.
Mark Merison of Strutt and Parker is one of the UK's top grouse shooting agents.
For the most part, I think the grouse prospects are good. It is to a certain extent rather like the curate's egg. It's good in parts, but however, I think people who had a good stock of grouse going out of the end of last season, strong birds, had a good breeding stock, and consequently have got good brood sizes coming out this year, and therefore are fairly bullish. I have heard of some stories in Inverness-shire, possibly, and also 1 or 2 in Yorkshire of people who've had to cancel days. But for the most part, the stories I'm getting are from moor owners who are in the happy position that they're having to put extra days in rather than cancel.
We're seeing quite a lot of interest for people wanting to go to Scotland. I mean, Scotland the last few years has been quite sort of disappointing in numbers, and there's a lot of sort of people who feel sort of Scotland is a home of driven grouse shooting. So we have seen quite a lot of interest for sort of shooting up in Inverness-shire and in that part of the sort of Scotland. But we are still seeing demand for England, which has been more consistent over the last few years. Demand for the sort of AAA moors has held up pretty well. People have been cutting back their shooting, but what they've sort of decided to do is continue shooting on the best moors. And so demand for the best estates has been very good for the last couple of years. We normally see a lot of days coming available later in the season because of a surplus of grouse. So I think people who haven't booked yet and are sort of waiting for the sort of the last minute deals to become available, I think there will be days available later in the season.
Grouse is a very special bird, and people will always try and find a way to keeping their days on that. Once you've lost a day on a grouse, it's very difficult to get it back again. Terrible dilemma I think people are actually having, whether do they take a day shooting or do they pay the school fees? And I'm afraid in these unenlightened times, the school fees 9 times out of 10 win.
Bangs all around us. You can tell we're at a have-a-go day. The Oxford Gun Company runs these days to introduce people to the sport.
We've got a have-a-go day today with around 50 people throughout the day. Some people have done it a bit before, but generally never picked up or handled a shotgun in their life. So they come up here, we take them out, we get them laughing and joking and relaxed, and before you know it they're grinning like Cheshire Cats and they're away, and hopefully they come back.
Over the years, tens of thousands of people have had a go. It costs just £20 to shoot 25 clays with an instructor, which takes about half an hour.
We're going to shoot 2 targets here. First one,
Here's the Oxford Gun Company's David Florent putting a new shooter through her paces. She doesn't have a shotgun licence. She doesn't need one. she can borrow a gun from the Oxford Gun Company. That's one of the reasons shooting is often more accessible and cheaper than golf or even tennis.
Pull the trigger. We're just going to have a look at one. Nothing's going to go off. Ready?
Clay shooting clubs and shooting schools provide one of the best ways for newcomers to shooting to try their hand.
I'm holding you back on. You want me to let go of the gun completely?
Yeah.
Have a go on your own?
People are able to shoot with expert supervision and coaching without the need for a shotgun certificate or to have their own gun.
Shorten that front hand a little bit. Right.
Okay.
Nothing in the gun. So
Yeah.
you come out, wait for that. That's where you wait.
Okay.
Ready? Elbows down. Weight forward from the waist.
Oh, I'm going to fall over.
Head on the wood. Ready? Now. Well done.
Clip it.
We'll blow one apart in a minute, don't worry. Well done. Let me do the work. Here goes. Now. Well done.
I didn't hit it, did I?
Yeah? You hit it, didn't you?
Yeah, it was really good actually. Not as bad as I thought it might be. I expected it to be a bit harder than, well, it wasn't easy, but I thought I'd miss them all, so I'm quite happy.
It was good. It was nice to have a little practice because I haven't shot for a while, so it was good. This is a 12 bore, and using quite light cartridges, so there isn't a very hard kickback, and it's quite a light gun.
It took a while for me to get into it, but I feel that once I get it, it clicks, and then I know what to do. But it was quite difficult with the wind because the wind was sort of carrying it in different directions. But no, it wasn't too bad.
As you see them come through, and some of them have never done it before, they walk away grinning, they come back confident, and they're getting stuck in, and they're doing as well as a lot of the adults here, if not better.
Follow it, pass it.
That's better. The Oxford Gun Company have-a-goers go on to enjoy shooting in all its forms. Some come back again and again as competitive groups, seeing who is the best shot. Others are back for practice prior to the game season.
It's something we do each year. I've been shooting here about 6 years. In fact, these folks taught me and my wife and my 5 kids. But I game shoot as well. And yeah, usually a couple of months before the beginning of the season I'll come down sort of every second week and make sure that I've brushed up, I think, the technique as well as the etiquette as well. Make sure that you're feeling safe and you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
And you're going to do the right things when you're out there on the live shoots. Yeah.
Coming out even on a wet day like today, that shows great dedication.
I don't know about dedication. I'm from Scotland. This is normal for me. It's not a problem.
Hello, Charlie. Alick, you made it. On time for a change. Thank you very much.
The Barnes family at Loyton run some of the most famous shoots on Exmoor, and their lodge provides 10 double bedrooms for a party of guns. During the close season, Alick Barnes runs one-day shoot etiquette courses here. This must have come from a feeling from you that there was a lack of etiquette in shooting, modern shooting.
Not necessarily a lack of, but a lack of understanding. And there is obviously quite a difference. Now, when you go back to my generation, and possibly yours, Charlie, we were all made to walk with an empty gun for a year, and if we put a foot wrong, we'd have our backsides tanned and would have an awful ticking off.
Yes.
People now go to shooting schools, which they get very good advice, etc., but they do not know the background and the traditions.
Thanks.
And we're trying to make people, thank you Adrian very much, they're trying to make people feel comfortable so that they can relax with the old hands and basically walk tall.
So you're trying to get them to enjoy shooting more.
Yes, yeah, and understand why. Understand what the keepers do. Understand what game crops are. Understand what a cover is. Understand all these things which, in conversation you find people just don't know what you're talking about. And the more you understand why and what you are doing, the better you get on and the more you enjoy it. But the whole course, and we cover everything from health and safety right the way through to gun handling, to giving tips, to having fun in a shooting lodge the night before,
Steady.
What you should do, blah blah blah,
and what you shouldn't do as well.
Yeah.
Is it a bit bossy? I mean, aren't you bossing people around and telling them what not to do?
I hope not. Basically, we're trying to make it fun, but always giving reasons why you actually do this.
And you do this as a summer weekend, so it's somebody in preparation for the coming shooting season will come to Loyton here in beautiful Devon, will stay in absolute lap of luxury in your hotel, and will get this sort of level of instruction that allows them to, as you say, walk tall when it comes to shooting later in the year.
Yes. The whole thing is to be totally relaxed. And again, it's a matter of what you do in a house party.
Yeah.
Well,
drink.
Excellent. But for example, being on time for a shoot. People don't realise that if you're actually 10 minutes late, what harm that can cause.
So what you're doing here is a kind of cosseted, comfortable boot camp for behaviour.
Yes. Tradition, good manners, and so many people don't prepare themselves before they go, because there's nothing more embarrassing than turning up without enough cartridges. So, when you accept an invitation, just quietly find out the sort of day you're having. Mm-hmm. Are you going to have a loader?
Drinking and shooting, what do you think about that?
Everybody knows their own capacity, and you have to basically drink to that capacity, but never overindulge. Now, for example, I know...
Never spill a drop. Don't drink and drive, you might spill it.
I know, for example, Peter's loaders.
Yes.
And the other loaders from Angus's other shoots do not drink until the end of the day.
So their job is in many ways as responsible, more responsible than the guns. I mean,
yes, they are responsible for the guns, and the guns must remember that if the loader says, "Please do this, sir," that they do what he says, or she does.
Well, let's go and meet Peter, and you very kindly offered me a go at double gunning on your simulated game layout.
Of course.
I'm sure Adrian will clear these away.
Yep, hopefully.
Let's give it. Shooting double guns is not as easy as Simon and Peter make it look. Simon is an expert shoot consultant based on Exmoor and knows the ropes on shoot days. He takes over the loading job from Peter, and I quickly run into trouble.
The main thing is what you were doing is you were opening the gun the moment you finished firing it, rather than just safety catch on and letting me take the gun away from you.
Are you telling me I'm a natural pigeon shooter rather than a natural grouse shooter?
You are, definitely. Practice is what you need.
So it's just practice and let you do the work?
Exactly. Your loader's there to do work. He's there for your safety, and that's why he's in control of the guns. All you have to do is concentrate on what you're shooting at, and the gun will be put in your hand.
He's also protecting your £120,000 investment in those guns, isn't he?
Exactly, because clashing of guns is a big no-no.
One of the biggest components of your shoot day is your gamekeeper, and etiquette plays a part here. Gamekeeper Peter Connachie explains how he likes to be treated.
To be fair, most people are very good with how they treat us. You get the odd person who, I think the main thing is most people don't understand exactly what the job entails these days. We work very long hours, especially at this time of year, in the middle of the summer. You know, we've got our young birds in, and we're looking after them and protecting them. If anything, we work harder now than we do through the winter. You know, everything we do now reflects on the 50 or 60 days shooting that we will have through the season. You know.
But when it comes to the actual shoot day, I mean, what do you want people to acknowledge your existence, obviously?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, on most shoots have their own tweet, as you can see. So keepers are instantly recognisable, whether it's the head keeper or the beat keepers, or even, you know, the under keepers. So it's something that, you know, if you've got a question, you want to ask something, then those are the guys to ask. They're easily recognisable, and I think, you know, it's just nice to be treated with, you know, that sort of little bit of respect, as we would treat the guns with huge respect.
Now, I got into terrible trouble when I was 15 years old. I was on a shoot and I tried to kill a pheasant by, you know, swinging its neck around and its head came off, and the keeper was furious with me because it was lack of respect for the birds. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, one thing that, you know, we try and instill into everybody is you've got to respect your quarry. You know, whatever quarry species you're after, it's got to be treated with respect. You know, it's presented to you as a sporting bird, and you need to be sporting about the way you handle it when it's dead. You know.
You're making a good case for manners for everybody, really. If you're a gun, manners towards the staff, manners towards the birds you're shooting.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's all about respect for each other, for the quarry species. You know, it's we don't want to be sort of stiff about it all, but you know, because everybody's there to have fun, including the beaters and the pickers up. You know, but a please, a thank you, a good morning, you know, goes a long way.